welcome to Nerds of the Old Republic, the podcast where we drink and discuss nerdy fiction, and where I actually read hard sci-fi and pretend to understand the science. I'm Adam.
I am Sean.
And I'm Mike.
Today we're discussing a Chinese sci-fi juggernaut, The Three-Body Problem by Cixin... I wrote the phonetics down. I'm sorry. I wrote them down.
This is what you heard, because I listened to something on YouTube, and I think they said Cixin Liu. Does that sound familiar?
I'd heard that one, or Cixin Liu, which I'm going to go for once.
I thought it was like Cixin Liu.
Yeah.
It's Cixin, I thought. I was about to say Cixin this whole time.
Crispin?
Cixin Liu.
Crispin
Glover?
Yeah.
Great actor.
You
really think I ought to swear?
The entire continent of America cringes at my pronunciation here. But before I continue to embarrass myself, we need your help, fellow nerds. Do you want a friendlier podcast player? I mean, nothing against the elephants in the room, those other podcast players, but GoodPods is a social podcast player that has taken over the scene. We're on there as The Nerds, and we'd love to follow you and have you follow us back. It's great. It's a no-cost way to support the podcast and add to your podcast experience by getting some social recommendations, seeing what other people are listening to, and shamelessly hawking your favorite podcast, which would be us, of course, right? So, why don't you hop on GoodPods if you're not already, and friend us there so we can have a conversation. We're going to start a group where we just chat about our nerdy fiction loves and just keep the conversation going that way. Because, you know, Twitter is going to become a dystopian world of hell pretty soon. So
it already is.
That's just my thought.
More so.
More so. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm not the only one who is already there.
Time to get on Truth Social, guys.
That will never happen.
I wish we could all see Adam's face right now.
I went through the 7 stages of grief in like a hot flash second right there and threw up in my mouth at the same time.
Well, the final stage is acceptance, is it not? So are we getting on Truth Social?
What is this, Room 101? You're just like 2 + 2 = 5.
Nice. You get a bell for the reference.
Yeah, that was a beautiful reference.
Appreciate that. That's the only way.
The worst thing in the world. Trauma 2024.
Do you know that on Truth Social, when they retweet something, they call it retruthing? I'm not making this up. This is real. They retruth things. And of course,
it surprises
there's a really obvious irony there, of course, but leave that unsaid.
Retruth rhymes with detruth.
Ooh, it does. I feel like that's related to the irony.
This whole conversation is above my head.
Why are we talking about it?
I don't know. Why are we giving them airtime? They're not sponsoring us.
No one is.
No. Not even GoodPods, who I just shilled for.
This is where the podcast needs to go, beep. Welcome to Nerds of the Old Republic. I'm Adam.
Take 2. No, you know what? If you followed along with us and you tried the Three-Body Problem as we did, and you found that hard science that includes 20 pages of unfolding a single proton into multiple dimensions of shimmering geometries for the useless description of a nano-civilization that attempts to destroy your macro-civilization is just too much, then join us for a visceral experience discussing Neil Gaiman's Sandman series on Netflix in 2 weeks. There's plenty of time to catch up if you haven't started the 10-episode series yet, and if you have no clue what I'm talking about, go back and listen to our cast on Sandman by the one, the only, Neil Gaiman. It is a real treat, and I think you'll enjoy it before you get to the series. Mike, I interrupted your bell reach.
Oh, I was going to give you a bell for all that sciencey sounding shit that you just said, which I thought was a great synopsis of the book. So
thank you. Yeah. We can move on from the book. No, I'm just kidding.
Shortest podcast.
We'll stipulate to that. And,
yeah, you could listen to 4 of these during your drive time in the mornings.
Sciencey shit. Scene.
We could just cut to Bill Nye, right?
Yeah.
There you go. No, we have got more things to do, like reveal the drink, which is Sean's decision here to not show us what we were drinking ahead of time. Could it be grain alcohol? I don't know. Could it be a beer?
Bathtub gin?
Likely.
Actually, I'm going with a really well-cultivated jailhouse hooch. So we're going to drink some toilet juice.
All right. This is a
Nothing
podcast.
but the finest.
I've been making it for months.
This is a podcast everyone's going to want to hear.
No,
through to the end.
No, this is a beer day for us because it's a work week day and we just want to make sure we take it kind of easy. But with that being said, I did buy some interesting beers for these casts we're doing this evening.
All right.
And since I couldn't find, I wanted to get, I think it's pronounced Baijiu, which is like a Chinese liqueur.
Yeah.
Or like a distilled liquor. And I can't find that anywhere in the Western New York area, so fuck our culturism here. We have none.
And I didn't have time to figure out how to distill from sorghum
So
to make the beverage they discussed.
we are we're kind of at a loss for trying to find something appropriate to the cast. So I just picked something that looked good to me, and you guys are gonna have to deal with it. So I bought for this particular cast because the second one is more appropriate, I think, for Sandman, but. This one we're going to be drinking a Resurgence brewery beer,
Hey.
and it is called Peanut Butter Porter.
Oh, I like this one, actually.
So I saw that, and I basically had to pick up my tongue off the floor because this looks good. Let me see if we can get this on a little ASMR here. Oh yeah, right on the back.
That's beautiful.
Resurgence is a local brewery to the Buffalo area. For those of you who are Western New Yorkers like us,
Thank you, sir.
Resurgence, if you want to be friend of the cast status, why don't you just give us a shout out? I know you know us on Instagram.
that's right.
I know you know.
We're always looking for free beer.
Well, yeah, indeed. All right, so
1 pint can.
yeah.
It is a peanut butter porter. It's a porter brewed with cocoa, chocolate, and peanut butter. And I'm gonna have to check my insulin pump and make sure that I'm good to go before drinking this one. It's a lovely looking can. I just want to open this bad boy and drink it.
All right,
You
let's
ready?
do that.
Well, we'll time it.
3, 2, 1. Ooh. Almost. Mike fails.
Oh,
Aw.
Cheers,
I'll still
gents.
cheers you,
Salute.
Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen, here's the weekday podcasting.
That is nice.
Oh.
That is nice. Not sometimes, these beers that have a flavor, the flavor's very upfront.
Yeah.
And there it becomes tiresome after too many. This is nice. This tastes like a porter, and there's like a hint of the peanut butter.
And I love this time of year because it's porter season.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Chill in the air. Nothing beats a good, dark, thick beer.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
I'm
Exactly.
passing out the bells tonight. You guys are
I
gonna.
like it.
You guys are gonna. I'm gonna pick up the self-esteem here. Give you some pride in yourselves. That's 3 bells already.
Aye.
2 for Adam.
The 3 bell problem tonight?
Oh, hey.
Oh, is that it? No, I'm not.
I did it. You know what I like about this, besides everything Mike said? Because, I've had, like, cocoa porter stouts, which are like someone took coconut cream and just shoved it in my beer. And it's, like, separated out
Probably
the top.
what they did, yeah.
Probably. It's light. It's not one of those porters that's, like, 12% alcohol, so you have to, like, share it in order to enjoy it. This is 5.5.
Reasonable.
It's going to be, it's delicious.
I didn't even look at that when I bought it. Also,
Oh, no, that's fine.
yeah, it's a good workday beer.
Yeah. Well, cheers, Sean. You picked a good one.
Yeah.
Been a blind squirrel finds a nut, gentlemen.
Enjoyable indeed. All right, well, we are going to enjoy our beers for a little bit here, and I really struggled for some sort of, like, food to go with it. I wish I would have just done what Sean did and was like, you know what, I want this because it looks enjoyable. I brought egg rolls, and
Yeah, but those are damn good, man.
they are damn
they-
good.
they smell
They are
really
damn
good.
good. I have some friends who like have Chinese American or who are from Chinese descended families, and they're like, none of the food sold here is really realistic. You gotta
We
get-
know that,
I
but
know.
Yes,
we
it's-
know that,
it's-
and I'm making it obvious for the cast that we know. Yes, we know that this is not real, authentic Chinese food, and we're
Right.
openly admitting that. And Sean was pointing to the translation from Ken Liu, because you were pointing out the fact that
I believe he's a Chinese American.
Yes.
So we
Yeah.
have the crossover. We have Chinese American or American Chinese food, and we have a translation from a Chinese American gentleman.
Yeah, the translator is quite a successful author all by himself.
own right,
on
yeah.
his
oh,
own.
absolutely.
And as egg rolls are quite a solid part of our culinary culture on their own. So
That was a fantastic tradition.
Yeah.
On that note, why don't we take a couple more sips of beer and have a couple egg rolls, and we'll come back after the break.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We are finishing or enjoying our peanut butter porters from Resurgence, and we are going to discuss Cixin Liu's, and you'll understand when you see our Twitter feed. Thank you. Why I said it like that. His book, The Three Body Problem. And I want to start with something that's been bothering, or maybe affected my reading a lot. How much did the hard science included in this book affect your enjoyment, understanding, or appreciation of the reading, whatever you want to phrase it as?
Tremendously.
Do you want to elaborate?
Do
on
I want to elaborate? Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I guess I could elaborate.
I mean, they elaborated for 72 pages about electromagnetic waves in the sun. So.
Yes, yeah. So, according to the
No.
Oxford English Dictionary, tremendously is a word that comes down from the Old Latin. Is this too much elaboration, or?
Are you David Foster Wallace? Because no.
Oh no, then I would. Well, I'll put footnotes when I fire this episode up on Twitter.
Surely you must be joking.
I'm not joking. Don't call me Shirley. What were we talking about? Hard science. Yeah. So I don't know that I necessarily want to give the wrong impression by leading with this, because I have positive things to say about this book.
No, I'm setting us up to be a hate cast.
But okay, then
I'm just kidding.
Then I will unleash my hate. We've already talked about Truth Social in this cast, so
You haven't gotten to that. So.
Yeah.
the hard science.
Do it.
I just am not the target audience for it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? I don't
yeah.
think that it's a fault of the book at all. I want to be clear about that. I think that was not a problem for the author. That's the book he wanted to write.
Mm-hmm.
And for the audience he wanted to write for, I think that that's what they want. And, I think the many positive reviews of the book and the fans of the book reflect that. I'm not the target audience for that. I'm a guy who, I like when I encounter science, I like it to be Star Wars or Star Trek. It's there as part of the setting, but it's not the major feature. And this book was science with a little bit of plot sprinkled in.
Yeah. I really appreciate the way you said, like, I want to just believe that that's how things work without being told this is how things work.
At least not in that much detail.
Yeah. Sean, what's your take?
My take on this whole thing was that was the best part of the book, and the quote-unquote story was so weak that I'm like reading this going like, really? Barack Obama recommends this?
He likes the science.
Right.
I'm not sure,
I mean,
actually.
the science was interesting. I guess I'm not a scientist, obviously. I'm an English teacher, and not to say that we can't like science, but I mean, I have a casual interest in those kinds of things. We go back to like the 3001 cast and that, and I like that kind of stuff. It was a lot of like intricate, electromagnetic kind of like, I don't know if that's like physics. There's a lot of physics in there.
Yeah.
A lot of that kind of stuff where I'm like, yeah, it's neat that they're getting into that detail. But then every time he went back from that to the quote-unquote story, I kept going like, well, now this is like someone's like notes on what the story is going to be when it's actually done.
Yeah.
That's how it felt.
And I'm like you. I have a fascination with science, but I guess my fascination extends to sort of the philosophy of science. I like to think about scientific issues in terms of like, how do they affect us? What does that mean? What are the implications of that? As soon as you start showing me your math, my eyes glaze over, and much of this book was the math, so to speak,
Yeah. I'm kind of in between. Like, I really like not just being expected to buy the premise of some technological terror or something like that.
Right.
But at a certain point, when you keep going back to that well, I felt like those were the more developed parts of the story. When I first started the book and I was like, oh, we've got a sci-fi book that includes the political realities of the world, because, I feel like sometimes the politics and the real world get left behind in sci-fi. I was really in. I was like, Chinese Revolution? Let's go. I want to see how this plays. But then I couldn't tell if it was the amount of science that got included that interrupted the story, or I actually also took issue with the amount of time that passed so rapidly in the first third of the book.
Yes.
We went through nearly a generation.
Right.
And then the rest of the book was so slowly paced. The discovery at Red Coast. Yeah, I get it. It took 8 years for the thing to come back. But like, maybe I was getting antsy at that point because I felt like both the politics that were propelling me through the first part and then the interesting science was stripped out.
Right.
So maybe it was more of a pacing issue for me in the way things were doled out.
I would agree. I think there was a pacing issue. Every time the story started, and the story, if I just sat here and described the story, I think in theory it sounds fascinating to me. That's why I was interested in this book for a very long time. But the problem is you'd hit these beats where like the story was starting to heat up, was starting to get interesting. For example, there's this great part where like Wang is the character's name, right? He comes into contact with that like secret organization whose name is escaping me at the moment.
The ETO.
Yeah, thank you. And it's like, okay, there's like, oh, wow, like these people have known for a long time that the aliens are coming, and there's all this like internal politicking and like there's conflicts within the organization, like all that suddenly got really interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then that chapter literally ended with, I'm going to forget the character's name, but she was the head of like one of the factions. She's like, well, Dr. Wang, she's like, we've told you some stuff, but we haven't told you everything yet.
Was that Yi Wenji?
And then it might have been. And then the chapter ends, and the very next chapter is them explaining in explicit scientific detail for pages everything that they felt he needed to know. And I'm like, see, that's the pacing issue right there. You got to find a way to abbreviate that shit and mix it in with the story.
Go John.
I guess part of my problem with this book was the whole time I'm reading it, I was in this meta place where I'm thinking to myself, is it just because I have Western expectations and I don't get how a Chinese novel is supposed to structurally work? And I kept thinking to myself, like, yeah, it's an English translation, but obviously something is missing. Something's not, like, the cultural stuff. Like, I am painfully ignorant about the Cultural Revolution and Chinese history, and I'm reading it going like, man, this guy lives in China. It sounds to me like he's like downing a major part of like his government's history. Are they shamed by this? And I kind of got it. I researched it and I figured out, I'm like, oh yeah, he's actually right on. But it's like I didn't have that connection, so that was a part of it that was kind of tough to get into it. But just the fact, like you said, it goes from like this moment of like, oh, there's a story, it's starting to get somewhere. He's developing a lot of threads. And then it's just like info dump for a long time, and then half those threads we never get back to, or it's like hand waved away. Mm-hmm. I kept going like, well, it's got to be something about like traditional Chinese style of storytelling or something, and I just have different expectations, so I couldn't let myself get lost in the book. Right, and that's what I'm looking for when I get a page turner or something. I am lost and I can't get out of it. This book, I had to force myself to stay in it, and that to me is not enjoyable.
Well. Two things in relation to that. I think it's a little of both. I think one is that this is the book that the author wrote, and he was more interested in the science than the narrative. I don't know his background. I didn't do any research. I would guess though that like he isn't a guy who was a storyteller first who got interested in science, but rather vice versa. But B, to your other point, it is a feature of Western literature, the way, and even compared to older Western literature, the way the publishing industry is now is we're very focused on character development, interior monologue, backstory, what motivates characters, how they're feeling.
I want to follow Frodo for 3,000 pages.
Yeah, there you go.
It's also the 3-act development too, right? Like the idea how the story progresses.
Sure. But in my very limited experience reading, Eastern authors who are not like American with Asian descent, but like they're East, they live in China, live in Japan, whatever, and that is their culture. One of my favorite authors is Haruki Murakami. He's a very famous Japanese author, and I've read a little bit of Yoko Ogawa, a couple of books by her, 3 books by her. But in that experience, I can tell you, like, there is a difference. Like, there is more emphasis paid to, it almost to me reads like what we think of as classic literature here, where they're not so in the headspace of the characters. Right. The deeds tend to speak more for themselves, and we're left to our own sort of judgment as a reader. And that seems to be more of a feature. So I think it's a little bit of both. The author focused on the science, but also this is not a Western author either. Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Storytelling modes vary by culture, and your conversation about the industry and what they push is also really prescient. I know the American publishing industry is laser focused on what they think sells, and traditionally that's to what sells to 50-year-old women who are in the upper middle income bracket, because that's who buys hardcover books in America.
That's true.
So or tweens
who need trilogies.
Yeah. Well, this is a trilogy.
True.
No, yeah,
it is a trilogy.
Yeah, they love their series, and they'll reread it and reread it and reread it. That's why you get the prequels, and that's why you get the like remakes from the love interest side, because they'll just eat that shit up.
Yep. Prince money.
Prince money, right? But maybe it's a gift that the rest of the publishing world doesn't work that way. And now that you mention it, it does kind of remind me in some ways of non-American authors that I've read before. Even like Camus' The Plague really reads differently in that the plot is so minimal, and you're expected to just dive into the philosophy, where here it's not philosophy so much as it is science.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So maybe I just need to be more open to that. And I think one of the things that also didn't fit into my expectations is that this is the first book in a trilogy. And I was looking for more climax than we got. When I got to about page 370, with 20 pages left, I realized that the arc of the story has 450 years more to go.
Yeah.
So, you know...
It's like Foundation in that way.
Yeah, it's like Foundation. And in that way, I was not set up for the correct pacing, to be fair to the author.
Right.
You know.
I hate to do this, but
go ahead.
I did read the Wikipedia, what do you call it, like the summary of the rest of the series. I thought to myself, I'm not going to read the other ones. I just want to see where he goes with it. It gets wild.
I'm down for wild.
Yeah.
I felt like this was tame.
Wild in a way where, like, you know how, like, this book, there's those moments where, like, a gajillion threads go in, like, 5,000 different directions?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of wild. Like, it just goes all over the place. And I'm reading it going, like, wow, how does he contain all of this in only 3 books?
Right.
Oh, wow.
That's what I was
So
left with.
it's really, I have mixed feelings about this, because I really struggled with this book. For all the reasons that we've said. The plotting, pacing, way too much hard science. But we haven't really talked about what the story is yet. But the story was, in theory, fascinating to me. You know, it wasn't Independence Day. Huge spaceships come and perch over the major cities and monuments and across the world. But it was a far more interesting, different, and I think probably realistic way of looking at what First Contact might actually look like. I was fascinated by that. Now, I, looked ahead and I didn't read, like, the rundown like you did, but I read, the general synopsis of the second book. And I'm torn now, because I'm like, it sounds fascinating. The Dark Forest is the name of the book, and it's an actual scientific concept. The idea that there are intelligent, alien civilizations scattered across the universe, but that all of them it's basically radio silence, so that they're all there. That they call it the Dark Forest because it's like if you have all these hunters trying to stay quiet in a forest, it would appear silent and it would appear dark, but they're there, right? And I'm like, God, this sounds fucking awesome. Like,
actually, that does
really
sound
fascinating.
really fucking
But then I'm like,
interesting.
am I going to start reading it and it's going to be the same as this? Like, plotting, pacing, way too much science. I don't know. So I'm very conflicted.
I'm like that. I love that, like Fermi paradox and the Great Silence and all that stuff about, like, are we alone and blah blah blah. And then you start getting into the details this person that Liu develops, and I'm going like, man, I'm having a hard time with some of, like, the speculative stuff, right? Like the it's an interesting, almost like Star Trek style premise. Like, we're going to use a video game to kind of soften the blow of, like, our eventual colonization and takeover kind of a thing, and we'll get people on our side. And that's kind of fascinating, but didn't really develop at all in the story. It sort of became like an also-ran part of the plot, which I was like, well, that really had the potential to be something much more major. The whole thing with the dehydration of the aliens and the
that was intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's fascinating, but then I'm sitting there going like, well, like they're talking about Proxima Centauri and all this stuff, and just the logistics of it. You go into this deep science about radio waves, but then you can't give me bullshit about the freaking biology of the aliens. Like, I want that right now.
Yeah.
Because he can't make it up. He doesn't know, so he can't make it up.
But I mean, this is a great. This is hitting on a point too that I was thinking of. Every time he went into that video game, it was like, it was like, wow, it's like there's a gigantic pyramid, and like the Earth is literally about to end, and it's like that's fucking awesome. That's high stakes. That's fascinating, and I'm trying to picture it visually, and it's like something about a comet coming across the sky, and that's a harbinger of doom, and I'm like, that all sounds great. I'm in for this, and then it's like, yeah, but then all the gameplay involves is them chatting about science.
Yes.
That's it.
It's Oregon Trail with a bodysuit.
Yes!
There you go. That's a good
what
way
it
to
is.
put it.
But then
You died of a 3-star
that.
problem.
I'm passing out the
the
bells.
thing,
I
as
appreciate that.
a video game connoisseur too, I'm like, who the fuck would play this video game? This sounds like the most boring ass video game in the history of video games.
I literally know humans who would play this game.
But
Hands
it's like
down.
E.T. for the Atari.
agree.
It's
Sure.
terrible.
I would still play it, actually,
Oh
if I
my
got a bodysuit
God.
with it.
Dude, no, okay, so the bodysuit, okay, another interesting, like, wow, that's
Sure.
pretty cool. But what are you interacting with? You're interacting with, it feels like, you know that game Myst? That
Yes.
came out a long time ago. It feels like, oh yeah, it's pretty to look at. No substance. It's just...
There's no plot,
We're just showing off what your computer can render on the screen. Like, that's it.
The problem with open world video games before Grand Theft Auto is always that. Unless you're given the choice point to be moral or immoral constantly, I feel like an open world video game is a walk in the forest.
But it was like the player did nothing. He just
No.
shows up
Yeah.
and they like kill some other dudes or whatever and like burn them in a whatever, and then it's like he leaves and like thousands of years have gone by. The civilization progresses. Like, well, you weren't even there for it.
Right.
You did nothing. You had no stakes in it. It was so okay. But I guess I'm circuitous way to get to my point.
Sure.
The video game, to me, I'm sitting there going, like, it'd be really cool if, like, how he talks about how they've stifled America, or not America, oh my god, they stifled human scientific development as part of their plan to take over, right? We can't have nanomaterials, which is what Wang was working on, and we can't have this, that, and the other thing, because they need to be able to take us over easy. So he concocts this incredible thing of unpacking the dimensions of a proton and turning
It's
it
like
into
the last
a
70 pages.
Oh my god, it's super amazingly fascinating, but it's such a fucking cockamamie answer. He had it right there. They used the video game for mind control, and that's how they're doing it. Like it could have been so much easier, but now I've got protons flying around at the speed of light, like disrupting things. What the fuck? Like, what was that?
Disinformation would have been the easiest way to confuse American scientists.
Any scientist. Yeah, it's just
scientists.
I didn't need sentient protons destroying accelerators around the world and like somehow listening in. It's just like it's like a fucking Rube Goldberg level of complexity that was unnecessary.
Yeah.
And like you said, it took like 100 pages to develop this freaking idea, which again could have been its own novel. Like you said in the intro thing, like, oh, this micro civilization trying to destroy the macro civilization in the 2D world. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Just no.
Well, you know, there's a great Futurama episode where the main characters in the series meet the disembodied heads of Star Trek actors. And then they get into, you know, a problem that, you know, they have to solve. That becomes the main conflict of the show. And they realize at the end that the way to solve it is in the classic Star Trek fashion. One person will say a bunch of science gibberish, and then the second person will explain it with an easy-to-understand analogy. So somebody does that, and then Fry goes, like putting too much air in a balloon. And that's exactly what they do. And I'm like, see, that's... Again, I don't want to criticize the book for the excessive science because the target audience wants it, understands it. For me, I'm kind of like that level of like, explain it to me in a way that's easy for me to understand. Make it an integral part of a fascinating and well-paced narrative, and I'm in. That's what I'm the target audience for.
I agree with that, and I felt like all of the deep dives, it was like he put too many into this book. Like the whole thing about unfolding the proton could have been its own like story. But again, I think I'm just westernizing my expectations and wanting that sort of like all-encompass sort of like moment, right? Where it didn't have to be this bigger thing. It could have just been its own story. Excuse me.
Where it could have just been a cold virus inserted into a USB port that you plug into the mothership and they all die.
Must go faster. We must go faster.
That's right. That's right. I'm glad you got that. Bill Paxton would be proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
So-
Well, today we celebrate nothing.
No.
It's Bill Pullman, right? Are we?
Fuck!
Oh, that's right.
I'm sorry. I was
Illustrator.
watching Twister last night.
We will not
So
go
Bill Paxton-
quietly into the nights.
Bill Pullman could be my president.
And of course,
Today we celebrate our Independence Day.
old friend of the show, Jeff Goldblum, of course. And that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I can quote any Jeff Goldblum from that movie, though.
Let's go
Unfortunately.
faster. We must go faster.
Oh, that was him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought
We'll
that
just
was...
we'll give it a cold.
Oh, there we go.
I think
Yeah.
there's like either did that predate or was that after Jurassic Park?
It was after. It
was
was the
Okay,
same
so,
line.
So there was like, I was gonna say there's like a it's the life finds a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the same chaos theory scientist, just with aliens.
It's become a, it's just, what's his name again?
Jeff
Goldblum?
Goldblum. It's a Goldblumian. Like, that's
yeah.
it.
All right, so I think I know where we stand. Are we all no's on this?
No.
Or am I flattening our complex
I don't
and
know.
morally
Has-
strong opinions?
Cast conspiracy theory. Has Mike ever said no? Dun, dun, dun.
Let's see. What have I said no to?
I know what you said no to.
What was the name of that book?
The City We Became.
City We Became. Thank
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
hard no
That's
on that.
right.
3001. I was a no on, but with the caveat that I highly recommend other stuff by that author,
Also, what you said about
which
N.K.
I haven't
Jemisin.
read, but isn't it? Yes, yeah, true.
You
Mike
always
always likes
lace-
to, he likes to soften his nose
Yes.
with, this author is a good person and a decent writer, but please don't read this book. Look at the other stuff.
It's like he's gonna punch somebody in the face. He's like, I'm just gonna put a pillow in front of your face first.
Yeah.
There he is.
Hurt you too bad.
Right before you kill him. Just you shut your mouth. And then you take him out.
But I would say I do recommend this book. I just think you need to be the target audience for it. I mean, it won the Hugo Award. People it got a very strong critical reaction in addition to commercial reaction. And again, I am a huge fan of the story. I wanted to read this book for years because the idea of First Contact being something that is slowly unfolding over a period of centuries is so fascinating to me. But I did not feel that narrative had any kind of pacing. It was interrupted constantly by basically science lectures, and the characters were not. I thought not well developed. Wang has a family, if I remember correctly, in the beginning of the book, which then vanishes.
Sometimes.
They're never referenced again. And how do we pronounce it? Did you watch a 30-minute on the minute video on how to pronounce Y-E? Is it Ye, the main female
I think it's
character?
Yi.
Yi, okay.
I think so.
Like a pirate. I got you. So, she kept being presented to me as like a sympathetic character, but I'm like, but she's intentionally trying to wipe humanity off the earth because her dad got beat up and killed. Like, I get her pain, but I can't connect with her because of what she's trying to do.
I had that same feeling.
And she murders two guys, right? Like
her husband.
Yes.
Am I the only one who really associated with her feelings of hating humanity? I think that's where we're at. Yes.
Ah, bro. I mean,
But would you
Not
kill
you
us
guys.
all?
Not you guys.
Would you kill us all?
Humanity.
everybody else,
No,
but
no.
not you.
That's
So-
really the breaking news of this podcast
Yeah.
is that Adam would kill us all.
But
No,
wait, didn't
I'm
she
just a
change
misanthrope.
though?
I'm a
Eventually,
misanthrope.
she softened and became an Adventist or whatever. Which
She
is,
regretted her actions.
Well,
Oh, she didn't regret it at all.
No, but didn't she become one of those, like, she wanted them to help us, like, manage ourselves rather than destroy us? Like, there's the part that
Yeah.
wanted humanity gone, and that was the guy who went rogue and started, like, the
Right.
ship and everything.
The
And then there was
redemptionists.
her that was more of like no, we can be saved, but we need their help.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, it was lost in the fact that
I couldn't get past the fact
Yeah.
that she's basically the one who was like detonating the nuclear bomb and then was like, oh, my bad. I guess we didn't have to do that. You know?
Ooh, sorry.
But anyways, my
Sorry
point...
I set the message to kill humanity.
Yeah.
My bad, don't
Yeah,
you
my
know?
bad. I'll help you clean it up, you know.
I was having a bad day, all right?
Yeah.
But my point is just, I think that, there's a lot... as much as I, struggled with the reading process, I'm honestly considering going right on to the next book. So I think it's there, and I think for the right target audience, they'll love it. Many people do. So I don't want to say that I don't recommend it. I will say that if you're a reader like me, of my tastes, then I would pass.
I might temper my no with a similar sort of caveat, like, yes, if hard sci-fi is your thing.
Very, very hard sci-fi.
Because I really do, like you mentioned, I think it was you, Mike, said, the idea that First Contact is not Arrival, and it's not First Contact, the movie, but it's, 450 years later, we have to plan for it. Humanity, get your shit together now. Okay, no, now, get your shit together. 200 years later, okay, you really got to get your shit together. Let's do this. Is so intriguing. Unfortunately, sometimes I am such a pessimist about our species that, like, those 200 years, those 400 years, we'd frittered away.
No.
I don't... But that
What
might
we're
be
doing
the
right
reason...
now with climate change.
Well,
right?
yeah.
It would get tied up in Congress, man. There's no way they're getting anything
Yeah.
passed.
there would be some sort of Joe Manchin of the alien fighting variety. Who'd be
Joe
like,
Manchin
"You know
the
what?"
fourth.
Yeah. Who'd be like, you know what? I live on Just Like Paradise over there, which is a spaceship right next to the moon. Y'all can go fuck yourself because I made a deal with the aliens.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get my money.
No, I'm all for stopping the aliens, but can we work in a little bit more of a kickback for the oil companies? I mean,
Yeah, I'm all for saving humanity. But what about those who want to kill it? Can we
Yeah.
make sure that they have a chance to thrive in this society too?
can we make sure that all of the anti-alien weapons are built in America?
Yeah. Just America. And if we can't, fuck it. Does it matter? No.
And all the minerals must be sourced from free trade company agreement or country agreements.
Well, there go all the lightning round questions. All right. There we go.
Oh, we
There you
skipped
go.
the lightning round.
We did. We're actually out of time, and I ran out of time to not make lightning round questions for this book.
No
So-
lightning round.
So, if
It's
you
probably
give me
a blessing,
5 minutes,
actually.
it might be a
It's
blessing.
probably a
because it
blessing.
would have all been nuclear physics. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I didn't. I didn't give you.
about nuclear physics from this book, so I might have done all right.
I didn't give you my recommendation yet.
Please.
Can you guys guess what it is?
No,
There's a lightning round question for you. Is it a
Ready?
yes or is it a no? Who's got it first? And
It
I
was
believe Mike got in there first.
I'm just gonna take a wild stab in the dark because there's been no clues. You've really held,
No.
played it close to the vest.
I think
here,
so,
There was
yeah.
no fuck yous this
No,
episode.
there's no booming fuck yous. It's really a poker face on this one. I'm just gonna flip a coin and say no.
Okay, what is your answer, Adam?
I'm going to say yes, for the same reason you said 3001, that it might be a hallmark in the genre.
I appreciate your effort on that answer, by the
Fuck.
way, but it is a hard no. It is unless you're a huge fan. And again, I have to say this comes from someone whose expectations bend more towards the Western style of storytelling, and again, it's probably my own bias because of that. And I'll have to say I'm not like Mike. I have not read widely of Eastern style writing, very little. And to me it was just I couldn't get into it because of that. I love all of the individual little ideas. I think they're really neat, but it's so disjointed, it's so underdeveloped for me as far as all those little points go. I'm just like I finished it and there was parts I'm still thinking about some of the parts, which is a hallmark of something I like. But in the end I'm sitting there going like, man, it just felt like I was just reading a bunch of notes, and that's just the kind of the feeling I got. So I gotta say, unless that's what you're expecting and that's what you want, it's a no.
All right. Well, you heard it from us. We tried really hard to like it.
Man, no fuck
We really
you,
did.
and no war horn for the lightning round. Damn,
No, I'm sorry.
I gotta put away my little button when I
Yeah.
when I put this thing together.
Lots
You know
of
what?
bells though.
Yeah, the bells
Yeah.
are good.
Just like the book, a lot of promise, a lot of letdown.
Not this beer though.
Not this beer. Resurgence
Damn, that was a
podcast.
good beer.
And on that note, if again this wasn't your style, why don't you come back around for Sandman, where we talk about mainly the Netflix original TV series that is a 10-episode long series by Neil Gaiman, The Sandman. It'll be vastly different. I can promise. It'll be vastly, vastly different.
And a new beer.
And a new beer. All right, we'll see you next time for that new beer and the new series. Till then, stay nerdy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.